They say greed is just wanting more, but that's a lie. Greed is wanting more than you need, more than you deserve, and more than you can ever hold. And sometimes it doesn't just ruin money. It ruins families. It ruins friendships. It ruins lives. Let me tell you a story that proves it. It started in a small town where everyone knew each other, a place where doors were left unlocked, where neighbors waved in the mornings, and where people believed that hard work was the only way to get ahead. In that town lived a man named Daniel. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he had something more valuable than money: peace. A simple house, a loving wife, 2 kids who ran into his arms every evening, and a small business that earned just enough to live comfortably. He used to say, "I don't need millions. I just want enough to sleep peacefully at night." For years, that was true. But one day, everything changed. A new company moved into town. Big buildings, shiny cars, well-dressed executives. They talked about opportunity, fast growth, and financial freedom. They promised people they could double their money in months. Everywhere Daniel went, people were talking about it. At the grocery store, at the coffee shop, even at family dinners. Everyone was suddenly dreaming of becoming rich. At first, Daniel laughed it off. He didn't trust shortcuts. He believed slow and steady was the only safe way. But as weeks passed, he saw his friends upgrading their cars. He heard stories of neighbors making in 1 month what he earned in a year. And slowly, something inside him began to shift. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't hope. It was comparison. He started feeling small, like his simple life wasn't enough anymore, like he was falling behind. At night, while his family slept, he would scroll through photos of people showing off their success. Big houses, luxury trips, stacks of cash, and every picture whispered the same lie: you could have this too if you just want it badly enough. That's when greed quietly entered his heart. Daniel didn't tell his wife. He didn't tell his kids. He told himself it was just an investment, just a smart move. He took money from his savings, the money meant for his children's future, and put it into the company. When the first return came, it was real. His money doubled. And in that moment, something dangerous happened. He stopped being grateful. He started wanting more. He reinvested everything. Then he borrowed from friends. Then he took a loan. Each time, the profits made him feel untouchable, powerful, like he had finally beaten the system. People who once doubted him now asked for advice. They called him a genius, and that praise fed the fire burning inside him. But greed is never satisfied. The more he earned, the more he risked. He stopped coming home early. He stopped listening to his wife's worries. He stopped noticing his kids waiting by the door. All he could see was the next number, the next deal, the next chance to grow richer. And he didn't realize that while he was chasing more, he was losing everything he already had. The warning signs were there. Rumors about the company, delayed payments, people complaining they couldn't withdraw their money. But Daniel ignored them. He told himself, it's just temporary. Big money always comes with risk. Then one morning, he woke up to silence. The company's website was gone. The office doors were locked. Phones didn't work. Emails bounced back. His money was gone. Every dollar, every dream, every lie he believed. He stood in his living room, staring at the walls that once felt safe, now feeling like they were closing in on him. His hands were shaking. His chest felt tight. And for the first time, he realized what greed had done. It didn't just take his money. It took his peace. Daniel didn't tell anyone at first. He walked around the house like a ghost, smiling when he had to, answering when spoken to. But inside, his mind was screaming. Every sound felt louder. Every quiet moment felt heavier. He kept replaying the same thought over and over. How do I tell them I destroyed our future? Days passed, then weeks. Bills began to pile up. The bank called. Friends he borrowed from started asking questions. His wife noticed the change, the late nights, the silence, the way he avoided eye contact. But he kept lying. He said work was stressful. He said everything was fine. But greed always leaves a trail, and the truth never stays hidden forever. One evening, his wife found the loan letters, the bank notices, the overdue reminders. She stood in front of him, holding the papers with trembling hands, her voice breaking as she asked, "Daniel, what is this?" He tried to explain. He tried to justify it. He said he only wanted a better life for them, but his words sounded empty, even to himself. She didn't scream. She didn't shout. She just cried, and that silence hurt more than any anger ever could. From that day, the house felt different. The laughter disappeared. Conversations became short and cold. Trust, once so strong, was now cracked. His kids felt the tension, even if they didn't fully understand it. They stopped asking him to play. They stopped waiting by the door. The home that once felt warm now felt felt like a place full of unspoken pain, and Daniel, he was drowning in regret. He tried to fix it. He worked longer hours. He sold his car. He even sold his wedding ring. But no matter how hard he tried, the hole greed had created was too deep. Every sacrifice reminded him of what he had lost, and every night he lay awake staring at the ceiling, wishing he could go back. That's when he finally understood. Greed doesn't come as a monster. It comes as a promise of more, a promise of better, a promise of happiness. But once you accept it, it starts taking things away, slowly, quietly, one by one, until there's nothing left to save.
Months turned into a year. Daniel's world had shrunk. The company he once trusted was gone. The friends he borrowed from avoided him, and even his relatives seemed distant. He had money nowhere, respect almost none, and peace. He hadn't felt that in a long, long time. But the worst part? The look in his children's eyes. They didn't understand the full story, but they felt the absence of joy. The carefree laughter at the dinner table, the bedtime stories, the weekend trips, all gone. Greed had stolen more than money. It had stolen memories, moments that could never be bought back. And every time he saw his kids staring at him with confusion and disappointment, Daniel felt a weight crush his chest like nothing else in the world. Then came the whispers in town. The neighbors who once admired him now avoided eye contact. The friends who praised his financial genius now acted polite but distant. Rumors spread fast. How he had risked everything, borrowed money, and lost it all. Pride, once a shield for Daniel, became a prison. Every glance reminded him of the choices he made. Every smile from others felt like a silent judgment. He realized, painfully, that greed wasn't just a mistake, it was a disease that starts small, hiding behind ambition and opportunity, promising greatness but ending in ruin if left unchecked. And Daniel had let it consume him. He had allowed himself to be blinded by visions of wealth, ignoring what truly mattered: family, trust, peace, and love. Daniel tried to rebuild. He got a small job, worked odd hours, and saved every penny he could. But the life he had before, the simplicity, the warmth, the security, was gone. Some things once broken by greed cannot be fully repaired. And while he slowly learned to live again, he carried a constant reminder of his past, the truth that chasing more than you need can cost you everything you already have. And here's the hardest lesson he ever learned. Greed doesn't just destroy wealth. It destroys people. It destroys relationships. It destroys the life you're too blind to appreciate until it's gone. So the next time you feel that urge for more, remember Daniel. Remember the house that lost its laughter, the family that lost its trust, and the man who had everything he needed but lost it all chasing what he didn't. Because greed, it never stops until it leaves nothing behind. The final blow came quietly, almost like fate itself was waiting. One rainy evening, Daniel returned home from his long, exhausting shift. The house was dark. His wife was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the floor. His kids were upstairs, silent. He had hoped that after all the hard work, maybe, just maybe, they could start to rebuild what was lost. But hope was fragile. His wife looked up, her eyes hollow. "Daniel, it's over," she whispered. It wasn't about money anymore. She didn't care about the debts or the lost savings. She cared about the trust, the love, the life they once had. And in that moment, Daniel understood that greed had taken something no amount of money could ever buy back. He tried to explain. He tried to beg, but words were useless. Actions had already spoken louder than any explanation. The house that once held laughter now held emptiness. The man who once had peace now carried a lifetime of regret. Daniel's story spread through the town as a cautionary tale. People would whisper his name, not with admiration, but with warning. And every time he walked past those who once envied him, he realized something painful. It wasn't just wealth he had lost. It was respect, love, and dignity, the very things that define a life worth living. Years later, Daniel lived alone. He'd learned to survive, but happiness never returned in the way that it had once existed. He spent his days working hard, giving back whenever he could, but there was a void inside him that no success could ever fill. He would often sit by the window, watching families laugh and play, remembering what he once had and what he threw away for something that wasn't real. The harsh truth settled in his heart. Greed is a thief that doesn't just take, it erases. And the scariest part, most people don't realize it until it's too late. So, if there's one thing to take from Daniel's story, it's this: appreciate what you have before the hunger for more blinds you. Protect your peace, cherish your family, and never let the the desire for more steal the life you already own, because greed, it never stops until it leaves nothing behind.
Even after all these years, Daniel's story didn't end completely, because the lesson he learned, the one that cost him everything, continued to echo, not just in his life, but in the lives of those who heard it. People began to come to him secretly, asking for advice. Young men and women chasing fast money, chasing the dream of wealth without patience or care, would find Daniel sitting quietly in the small cafe he now owned, and he would tell them the same thing he had learned the hard way. Greed is a trap. It looks like a door to more, but it's really a cage. You can lose your family, your friends, your peace, everything you already have, before you even notice it slipping away. Some listened, some didn't. Some walked away, laughing at the old man who lost it all. But Daniel didn't care anymore. He had learned that the most valuable thing a person could have wasn't money, it wasn't fame, it was understanding. Understanding that life is fragile, and chasing too much can destroy the very foundation you stand on. And though he lived humbly, he finally found something he thought he had lost forever: clarity. He watched his children grow up. They didn't have the lavish life he had once imagined for them, but they had something far more important: love, guidance, and honesty. And every time they hugged him, laughed with him, or came to him for advice, Daniel felt a quiet redemption, not for the money he lost, but for the lessons he could pass on. Because in the end, greed doesn't just destroy, it teaches, but only if you survive it. Only if you open your eyes before it's too late. And Daniel, he survived. But the memory of what he lost, the life he threw away chasing illusions, it never left him. And that is the true price of greed. Not just what it takes, but the shadow it leaves behind for the rest of your life. But the story doesn't end with Daniel alone in his quiet life. Greed, like a wildfire, doesn't just stop at one person. It spreads. Even after everything he lost, Daniel began noticing it in his town, in people he once knew. Friends who had seen his downfall were already chasing the next big opportunity, blind to the lessons he had learned the hard way. He realized that greed isn't just personal, it's contagious. It's a temptation that whispers louder when you see others winning, when you hear about instant success, when you scroll through the perfect lives on social media. And the worst part? Most people don't see it coming until it's too late. Daniel tried to warn them. He would sit in small groups, sharing his story, every detail, every mistake, every heartbreak. But young people laughed. They said, "We'll be smarter. We'll know when to stop." And he would just nod, knowing they wouldn't. Because greed always convinces you you're the exception, that the rules don't apply to you, that somehow this time it will be different. And every time he watched someone fall into the same trap he did, Daniel felt the old pain return, that hollow emptiness, that crushing regret. And he knew the truth. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Some mistakes cannot be avoided. And greed, it will never stop hunting until it claims everything it can. Yet Daniel also discovered one more truth. The only way to survive greed is to value what money can never buy: trust, love, peace, and integrity. If you cling to those, you may stumble, you may lose, but you won't be destroyed completely. And so, Daniel became a living warning, a reminder of what happens when desire overtakes reason. His life was forever scarred by greed, but in sharing his story, he found a purpose greater than wealth, a chance to save others before they made the same fatal mistake. Because greed, once it enters your life, never truly leaves. But wisdom, even born from failure, can outlast it. Years passed, and Daniel grew older, his hair graying, his steps slower, but his mind sharper than ever. He had survived greed's worst, yet its shadow remained, a quiet reminder in every decision, every thought, every glance at the life he had once thrown away. He came to understand something profound. Greed doesn't just destroy the present, it steals the future, rewrites the past, and leaves scars on everyone connected to you. The money, the luxury, the fleeting excitement, all of that was meaningless compared to what he lost: trust, love, and the simple joy of being content. One evening, sitting on his porch as the sun dipped behind the horizon, he watched the world move around him, children playing, neighbors chatting, life continuing, unaware of the dangers of greed that lurk in every desire for more. And he whispered to himself, almost as a warning, "Don't chase what
what can ruin you. Don't sacrifice what you already have for what you think you need. Learn from me before it's too late. He realized the final truth. Greed is relentless, but regret is eternal. You can lose everything in pursuit of more, but if you understand the lesson it leaves behind, you might survive it. Not unscathed, but wiser. And that wisdom, that is the only wealth that truly lasts. As darkness fell, Daniel sat quietly, knowing he would never be the same. But for the first time in years, he felt a fragile sense of peace. Not because he had regained what was lost, but because he had finally learned to value what truly matters before it could be taken away again. And that, he knew, was the last thing greed could never touch.